Today I want to talk a little bit about education and where I think, or where I wonder it's going to go in the next, we're going to say 10 years. So I've seen a lot of YouTube videos and I've heard a lot of people in real life talk about how college is a scam, don't go, how much student loans are just usurious debt, which is something that I agree with. But what I haven't heard a lot about is, for example, the increase in this usurious debt and upfront costs on things like trade school. And I'm wondering if trade school is going to be the next big college bubble, right? Because you already see a lot of people, mostly men, apparently. Because again, you hear all this based on data that you don't look into, right? So we're going to take all this with a grain of salt because all these studies are based on data you and I are not looking into very hard, right? So we see a lot of guys moving out of the college track onto the trades track because that's where you make the money, right? It's how you make money now because you're not going to get the good corporate job. So I hear that the student loan issue is seeping into trades, and I also hear that with an increase in supply in tradesmen, you start seeing a depression in wages, and also that an increasing number of companies that employ tradesmen, plumbing companies, electrical companies, general contractors, are becoming owned by private equity. And when they're owned by private equity, they're just there for profit. So, well, I guess every business is technically there for the profit, but they bring along a lot of the private equity shenanigans that I'm sure you've heard about if you know about private equity. So, looking at that, and based on some other rumors I've heard, such as, trade companies not hiring people on as apprentices, but rather just keeping them on as helpers and not allowing them to actually progress in the trade, especially if it's not a union shop. Like, I don't even know if you can do that at a union shop. But I'm wondering if in the next 5 years, 10 years, we're going to see what happened to the white collar working world happen to the blue collar working world in as far as the trades go. And after that, once you gut the trades, once you gut that career path, and now you have the college loan usury bubble and a trade school loan usury bubble, where are you going to go next? Is there going to be a long term end to the developed world's, mostly the Western world, obsession with education, right? I'm not sure what that's going to look like because we already know that the education that they talk about, or that the world I live in talks about, doesn't actually involve education. Because you talk to somebody, if they're not getting a STEM degree, and even if they are getting a STEM degree, if they're not serious about the STEM degree, once they graduate, they usually aren't any more educated than they were when they went in. Now, they might know some more factoids in the same way that somebody who starts browsing Reddit will know more things after 6 months, but how much of it is applicable? How much of it is actual skills? And I would say most of it's not. Like, these people, they don't learn the classic liberal arts when they go to school. They're not learning grammar. They're not learning, what are the other liberal arts? They're not learning grammar. They're not learning rhetoric. And they're not learning logic, right? They're not getting the basics. And I believe those three were, what do they call them? The trivium. And I believe that was the foundation of early high school curricula, was to make sure that you knew those three things. Now, I think what you're going to have is this increased debt fueled bubble based around education. and social striving. Oh wow, we're gonna go way off in a tangent. We're gonna talk about Popper. I think it was Popper, and his idea of an open society, and this idea that like you can't have a fixed position in society. You have to always be in a position where you can be climbing up, right? You always got to be trying to get to the top of that pyramid. And the issue with your pyramid is like part of the things that define it as a pyramid is there are fewer spaces at the top and at the bottom. And when you start structuring your entire society around this idea that you or your kids have to make it higher than you, they got to make it further up, strive higher up on this social pyramid than you did, then you're going to turn your whole society into this giant hamster wheel of people trying to strive to the top. Now that's going to cause some interesting problems. And one of them is there's a lot of skills, there's a lot of labor that has to be done in society that's not elite class, it's not prestigious, but it still has to be done. And now you have fewer and fewer people who want to do that, even if it's higher paying. And then when you produce so many people that have the alleged skill set to do these higher and prestigious jobs, you inadvertently got the you got the pay and you got the prestige of the job because there's so many potential applicants for it. You're getting an inverted pyramid for your hiring base in essence. And then I think you're going to see, in fact, I think if you want to see where all this kind of goes, you sort of look at South Korea from what I've seen over there. And again, all of this comes through the internet. So much of our analysis of the world comes through the internet. And I think you're going to, well, you already do see a lot of negative parts, but that's another video. So I think you're going to see so much of your society structured around getting education, getting to the top, as we already are. We're 10, 20 years behind South Korea and the extremity of that. And I think eventually you're going to have a point where you're going to have so much of your social capital and your GDP tied up in this impossible rat race to the top that you're not going to have any more real production. And, you can kind of see this in the United States right now where we don't really have any heavy industry. We have very little heavy industry. And so much of it gets offshored because it's not elite work. So it has to be offshored, right? And eventually something is going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be a fuel crisis, a currency crisis. Something is going to happen where you're going to need production and you're not going to have production. And I think that's where all this ends. I think it all ends when some black swan event occurs to where your society all of a sudden now needs production, real production, not fake fake white collar production. And then you have to retool on the fly. It's like a house of cards, or like that XKCD comic where you have this giant structure, but it's being supported by one tiny piece, which is sort of the education institute, or the education institution, or industry. There we go, the education industry. And one day it's going to collapse. It's really interesting to see what happens from that. But yeah, I guess my message is if you can get a really good job that's really secure in the education industry, you don't have to work that much, but you get paid a lot, you should do that and then do something else that's actually productive on the side. And then if you have kids or you have younger relatives, they're going to not have the ability to get into the education apparatus, the education industry right now. But let's say you have a profession, let's say you are a HVAC technician, you own your own business. Apprentice these people. Just hire on your nephews as apprentices so they don't have to get screwed by the education industry that you're not part of. Yeah, I guess that's it. Later.